Mullrat Dungeon Escape, or sometimes called by its alternative name of Slasher's Keep, is about mole rats and escaping dungeons. This game came out of its early access closet on November 19th of 2020, and I never heard of the game before then, but that day I decided to buy it on a whim as the concept of a roguelike, looting, dungeon crawling game interested me, as per usual. Upon starting, you get the privilege to choose between not one, but two different customizable characters, with a couple of unlockable ones down the road, of course. There are many differences between the characters aside from their unique trait and their own personal story. Each character's story of how they ended up wrongfully imprisoned in Slasher's Keep is different from one another, and is revealed to the player as they play throughout the game. After each floor is completed, you'll get a little blurb about each character's specific story as it gradually gets more and more interesting as you play. It's kinda nothing really to write home about, but I'd say it's a fairly effective tactic, as I want to know what happens next and how this all ties in with the false imprisonment of each character. My favorite element of the story, however, is that they're all connected in some way, as each story almost always contains the main villain character, Bendrick. Upon starting any new run, you're greeted with a small and cramped cell with nothing except an uncomfortable looking bench and a bucket with a piece of bread in it. What I'd give to be a Norwegian citizen right now. Just simply knock the cage open and you're off on your mission to escape from Slasher's Keep. The gameplay, in the best way I can describe it, is kinda like Paranautical Activity, if any of you even remember that game, but with more fantasy medieval-esque combat. You go from room to room in a randomly generated dungeon, searching for loot and secrets as you find your way to the next floor. The combat consists of swordplay and sometimes ranged attacks via magic wands if you're feeling spicy. One-on-one combat with melee is what you'll mostly be doing though. Slash the bad guys, block when they attack, nothing new, but blocking, or parry rather, is somewhat expanded upon, as you actually need to face in the direction of the oncoming attack in order to parry successfully, which adds some fast reaction time gameplay. There are also 4 different types of melee weapons that one can attain. Short sword, long sword, axe, mace. Goes from fast to weak to slow and powerful, yeah, you get it. I typically stuck with the long sword. I'm a fencing kind of guy, not a really big fan of slow and powerful. Although I will say that all went out the window once I discovered the Exterminator. This thing looks cool and it shoots fire? Like, yeah, of course. Another piece of commonly used close-range combat is your inventory sack. It may not do any damage, but it's a great knockback tool. You can use it to teach people about intruding on others' personal space, or you can use it to knock them off cliffs or into spikes. Spike kills is typically what I do with a knockback, as it not only instant kills, but it's also satisfying as heck to pull off. Just luring the enemies into traps in general is super satisfying and funny. And it's clear that a lot of combat revolves around knockback from the inventory sack, and how that can all be used to your advantage. I swear, like almost every room has either spikes, acid, or cliffs or something that you can knock these guys into. I thought that the amount of loot in your inventory would increase the knockback of the sack, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Magic wands are also used for range attacks, and I don't know about other people, but I almost never use them. They're fairly low damage and have an ammo cost, and they break when ammo is depleted. Why? Yeah, range attacks are more of a privilege in this game rather than a basic human right, so you won't be using this much at all unless you're trying to aggro an enemy from afar, or dealing with these gosh dang mosquitoes. Oh my god, I hate these guys! They shoot projectiles, like, fine, whatever, but when you try to get close to them, they back away, making it hard for you to hit them with melee attacks. But if you try to run away from them, they'll chase you, and when they're chasing you, they're abnormally fast, and it's a bit scary. But at least with them chasing you, you can bait them into getting into your melee range. Just move the entire shell. Yeah, just move the entire shell. You don't need to walk around it. Just... Okay. Oh. Come here. Come here. Okay. Oh! Oh, he's not happy about that. I went a while without mentioning that mole rats are in this game. Did you know that mole rats are in this game? Sometimes they're hostile, and sometimes they'll try to sell you stuff. There is no in-between. But man, the loot you can buy at the shops or just find lying around is sick. It's always a blast finding new pieces of armor and seeing how cool they look on your character, as well as all the trait bonuses on each unique piece of loot. Too bad you lose it all when you die. As this game is a roguelike at heart, dying equates to losing all of your progress and inventory, as well as a few levels. But remember that little chest that spawns outside your cell on each new run? Yeah, of course you do. It'll give you a weapon and some armor or accessory to get you going at the start of your new run. But as you go about your run, you'll find these item chutes, and any item tossed on there will show up on that exact same chest on your next run, which means you could really overpower your character early on with some of the items that you found in the later game, as well as preserve some of the cool loot you found on your last run. Another interesting game mechanic is the crafting system. That's right, you can craft your own melee weapons and nothing else. It took me a bit to figure out how it even works, but basically you just need the holding parts and the blade or head, and any other accessory can be added for visual flair or bonus powers, or both. You're able to move basically any accessory around on this blueprint space, and this kind of creative freedom can lead to some awesome weapons. Like this one I made, which I called the Blade of Fire and Ice, or something generic like that. In hindsight, I really should have just called it Icy Hot. I went on a freaking rampage with it, only for me to lose it about a minute later by walking off a cliff. Yeah, that's the unintentional downside to crafting. With this amount of customizability, you feel a connection between you and your newly crafted weapon, and it's gonna hurt even more when you inevitably lose it. You even get to name the thing. Like, if you name something, you are officially emotionally attached to it. That's just science. That's why farmers don't name their chickens. Makes eating them a lot less mentally taxing. You can also just make whatever the hell this is. So, that's pretty cool. As mentioned previously, Slasher's Keep has a leveling up system, as most dungeon crawlers and RPGs would, but when combined with a roguelike, it can be, well, frustrating to say the least. At least with the route that Slasher's Keep went with it. It's especially bad when you're kinda good at the game and you die, not because of a silly mistake or a lack of understanding of the enemies or traps, rather you die because you're extremely underleveled and therefore your attacks do pathetic amounts of damage and the enemies do ridiculously critical blows. But this can be all solved by grinding. Who needs skill when you can just grind for XP? Look, Slasher's Keep is an enjoyable game. I'm really having a lot of fun with it. But who the f wants to do 70 floors of this? Keep in mind that this is not like an endurance test, as you basically have to die every few floors of progression you make, just so you can go back to floor 1 and grind XP, and then to make it a little further, and then go back to floor 1 to grind, and then to make it a little further, and then go back to floor 1 and grind. Yeah, you get the idea. You'll be seeing the same types of floors, the same kinds of enemies, and the same kinds of traps over and over again. And this would be fine for any other roguelike, but with being so unfairly underleveled, I don't feel like these deaths are my fault. I'm absolutely learning how to defeat these enemies and maneuver around traps. It's just I'm so underleveled that I die so quickly. There's not really a way to fix this per se, as it's something rooted in the gameplay itself, as items and armor revolve around levels and skills. However, I don't think that this means the game is fundamentally flawed. First of all, some people really like the grindy aspects of this game. I don't, but some people do. At least every run you do, you're bound to make some progress. And second, the game does have features that plays well with the leveling up system in order to make it less hair-pulling, such as the aforementioned item chute, which gives your next run a head start. There's also a kill streak feature, whereas the faster you take down enemies in rapid succession, the more XP you get. And these two features combined allow for the early game of future runs to be a breeze, and in theory get you back to where you were when you died. So, it's not bad game design, but if you're playing on larger floor dungeons, then you are in for a long, long journey. In my opinion, this system of leveling up and grinding works quite well on smaller dungeons, as death won't send you that far back. I might have a problem with the leveling up each time I start a new character, as I don't really like grinding for XP, but when I'm playing on smaller dungeons, it feels like more of a fair challenge. And I'll admit that starting new runs with more powerful characters is quite satisfying, as you can just cut through all the enemies like butter. The overall structure of dungeon exploring and unique combat and loads of awesome loot all tied into a revenge story with mole rats? It's really fun. You'll absolutely get your money's worth from this. If it sounds at all interesting to you, you should definitely get it. Okay, that's my review on Slasher's Keep. Bye!